Welcome to episode 5 of the Wellness Whisperer podcast. I'm Brenda Geiger, your host and owner of Well Marketing. Today, I have the great privilege of introducing you to a good friend of mine and physician in Georgia. Her name is Dr. Jean Lawrence. Jean will be speaking about the life-changing impact of gut health and good digestion. Did you know that 2 in 3 Americans are unfamiliar with the term gut microbiome, which is where trillions of bacteria live in our digestive tracts? Did you know that 3 in 5 Americans don't know an unhealthy gut can increase the risk of heart disease and stroke or dementia? And that 71% of Americans don't know antibiotics can kill the good gut bacteria in addition to the bad. And that 60% of Americans don't know that food sensitivities are not the same as food allergies, and food allergies can wreak havoc on the gut. So let me introduce Dr. Jean Lawrence. Dr. Jean Lawrence is a nationally recognized speaker for both Mosaic Diagnostics, Envisia Diagnostics, and Standard Process. She is an expert on the subject of whole food nutrition. She has a certified nutritionist degree for the past 18 years. And in addition, she is a master herbalist, a doctor of naturopathic medicine, a certified functional medicine practitioner, a certified clinical nutritionist, and has a PhD in natural medicine. So basically, Jean knows her stuff. Let's dive in. But for now, welcome Dr. Jean Lawrence from Lawrence Health and Wellness in Toccoa, Georgia. I'm going to start Dr. Jean, who I call her. I've known her for a year now, and she helped me with my hormones. She is phenomenal. She knows her stuff. Why do 2/3 of Americans have gut issues?
Well, that's a very interesting question. And the answer would be because they are not breaking down their food. So I had heard previously that 30% of Americans were taking antacids daily. Now it's half of Americans. Okay, so if we have like 300 million people in this country, that's 150 million bottles of antacids daily.
That's
No.
Yeah, no.
It's not working. And so what happens is that it creates more and more food sensitivities, and it perpetuates the leaky gut, which I will explain that whole pathway. Would you like me to do that now?
Please. Nice segue.
Okay. So behind me, if anybody they probably won't be seeing it, they'll just be listening to it. But I have a digestion poster in my office, and it's from Scientific Publishing, and it's laminated. It's lovely. Every new patient of mine gets this talk. And we discuss about what the acid should be in the stomach, what it should, then how it becomes more alkaline towards the gallbladder. And if we have time today, I'll go through that.
Right.
But if a person is taking a PPI, or they just don't have enough stomach acid, just because older people like over 80 don't make a lot of stomach acid, or if they have Helicobacter pylori, the most common infection in the world, but 80% of the people that have it have no symptoms, or if they have a hiatal hernia, they need to be checked by their chiropractor for a hiatal hernia. And if they have any of those factors, they will not break down their food. So their food sits there like a bowling ball in their stomach. And 2 weeks later, 2 hours later.
Hopefully not 2 weeks later.
Well, I don't know. I have patients that only have 1 bowel movement a week, and I'm like, no, that's no bad.
No bueno.
So the food will sit there, and 2 hours later, they feel like they just ate. It's like, oh, and then it's 3 and 4 hours later. And what happens is the food is fermenting and putrefying in the stomach because of a lack of acid and a lack of enzymes. And it will back up and cause reflux. And the person thinks I must have too much acid when actually they don't have enough.
Okay.
So then it stops the whole process of absorption and breakdown. So normal protein breakdown becomes ammonia in the liver and urea, and then is sent to the kidneys for excretion. Well, if we're not breaking down proteins, then we have too much ammonia, and then the ammonia perpetuates leaky gut. Now, one of the things people use to heal the gut is L-glutamine. And my question was not that it does work, but why does it work? What is the mechanism behind L-glutamine? And the whole reason for it, and this is based on PhD in biochem that started Genova Labs. Okay, so pretty smart guy. He said the whole reason is because it lowers ammonia levels in the gut, which tells you that leaky gut is tied to poor digestion.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's looking at it like that. Well, let's just heal the gut repair protocol, 6 months, thousands of dollars, blah, blah, blah. No, no, no. Where nobody has, like a Nexium deficiency. Okay. We got to start upstream in the stomach and see what's going on. But if somebody has thyroid antibodies, like they have Hashimoto's,
Mm-hmm.
one of the main reasons for that is Helicobacter pylori. And who would think it?
No. Yeah. Well,
anyway, go ahead.
You just got real high level on us real quick, which I love because you can go high and low and midstream. But let's start over. You said in 2023, you saw a lot of long COVID patients and you saw a lot of people with poor digestion. What are the signs of poor digestion?
Okay. Burping, belching, gas. Okay. Now I want to stop at the gas one for a minute. Now, men seem to love having gas. Just an observation. This is women. They're like, I'm so sorry. Excuse me. Oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. And the guys are like, check it out. They're just so thrilled about it. So if there's gas, we know that gas is produced by fermentation. Just like if you put yeast into bread dough and the bread rises, that's the gas. And then you punch the dough down. That's what you have to do. When you punch it down, it goes, and all the air comes out. Mm-hmm. That's what's happening in your stomach. So it still comes back to not enough enzymes and acid. Now, some people don't need acid and enzymes. They just need enzymes. Mm-hmm. A good broad spectrum digestive enzyme is never a bad idea. Okay. Especially if people eat too quickly. I hear this a lot, right? So they're saying, I'm eating too fast. It feels like my food is stuck. Well, why are you rushing? Whatever you're rushing to can wait 5 more minutes. Okay. Right. You need to relax. We need to be in what's called parasympathetic mode, which is resting and digesting. So gas, belching, burping, bloating. So a lot of women will tell me that they look 9 months pregnant during the day. And the next morning they're back to normal. And then it happens again. And then they're back to normal. I said, well, this is fermentation. And it's just, you're not breaking down things. So think of enzymes like Pac-Man, and they're going wonka, 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 and they're breaking up your food. So I also tell them to imagine you're eating an entire tree and telling your body you have to break this down into splinters and slivers. That's a lot of work. Right. And it also takes all your energy to do this. This is why after Thanksgiving, nobody goes out and runs a 5K. It's called football and sit on the couch. That's the plan, right? Because everybody's like, oh, I ate too much. And so overeating is a big cause of this. And to just slow down and it takes supposedly 20 minutes for the brain to realize that we're full. Mm-hmm. But some people can't help it, but I still hate to see people eat in the car.
Oh, yeah.
Now, other signs of poor digestion can be peeling fingernails. Oh. So I had a gentleman that came in and one of his symptoms was peeling fingernails. I hadn't even looked at the rest of his information. I said, are you taking an antacid? He said, how did you know that? I said, because I'm the wizard, that's why. But so in other words, you're not absorbing minerals that the nails are made from, and therefore they can peel and split and crack and all. Now, skin conditions can also be signs of poor digestion. Okay. A poor immune response, because when you measure globulin in blood work, you have albumin and globulin that are always together on blood work. And globulin is your immunoglobulins that fight infection and disease. You won't have those if you don't have enough protein and you don't have enough acid. That's very specific to that. So it can also be other things, because if you're not breaking this down, absorbing proteins, you're not going to build muscle, right? So you're going to go to the gym, nothing's going to happen. You're not going to build muscle. You're not going to make your hormones. Your brain isn't going to work. Your immune system needs protein to function. So if there's poor digestion, a lot of people will say, I burp and I tasted something I ate. Now, a lot of people will say that, like, oh, there's the meatloaf I ate yesterday. Oh. You should not be doing that.
It's so fermented those are basically in your body. If you're burping up the taste, it's fermented, right? Okay.
That's right. And it never tastes as good the second.
No, no. Well, thank you for describing all those lovely symptoms. How, as a doctor, how do you look for digestive issues? What kind of tests or what do you do when someone comes in your office to find out if it's really in their stomach?
Okay. So first of all, I will check them for a hiatal hernia. And so this is, if I'm on the phone with somebody, I will tell them to put their hands on their ribs underneath the breast area and find their ribs, and then come to the center and kind of follow it up to where the ribs would be coming together.
Mhm.
You can feel the ribs getting closer.
Yeah.
And that's called the xiphoid process.
Oh.
Now, at the top of the xiphoid process, there's a little natural indentation there. And when you press on it, if it's tender, this can mean a hiatal hernia.
Oh, didn't know that.
Now, what does a hiatal hernia mean? It means that your stomach is pushed up into your diaphragm and affects breathing. It can cause heart palpitations. It can cause indigestion, reflux, all these kinds of things. So a chiropractor who's trained in that can pull that back down. It doesn't hurt. It's just a little discomforting, but it's just, he pulls it down with 6 or 7 pull downs with his hands.
Mhm.
My husband has to do this for me because I sit a lot at my desk. So I have to have that pulled down occasionally. But this can also come from
Let's stop.
slouching.
Tell the
Oh,
audience your husband is a doctor. He is a
yes, my husband's a
chiropractor.
chiropractor. My husband's a chiropractor.
Good.
Last I checked. Okay, so you might be selling used cars today. I don't know. Okay. So he will pull that down manually. He does that on, I would say half of my patients probably have a hiatal hernia. It's that many.
I'm going to have my mother check when we hang up because I think she has one now that you described it.
Yes, yes. And also a person will say, I don't want anything resting on that area of my body. Like they don't want a kid to sit up, kids will climb up and sit on you, or a book laying there, or a tablet. It causes discomfort. They can't lay on their stomach. They also can have trouble breathing. So that's not good. We don't want that.
Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, but the test that I would see to answer your question, low chloride in a blood test, even by itself or with low sodium, because a lot of people are on a low sodium diet, which is crazy. Okay. So sodium and chloride together means salt, and you need sodium to make stomach acid. So if they're on a sodium-free diet, they're not going to break their food down.
That makes sense. So all these
then,
suggestions we've had over the years are probably making us sicker if we're not getting in tune with the science.
Yes. And I also ask people if they drink a lot of water with meals. And a lot of times they'll say, oh, I'm drinking this much water with it. And like they're so proud of it. I'm like, no, drink it between meals. Don't drink it with food because it dilutes that precious stomach acid. And that can be a huge reason for digestive issues that's so easy to fix. But I'm going to tell you one you probably wouldn't have thought of.
What?
And that is people who chew gum.
It reduces your digestive enzymes, or?
No, it actually increases them at the wrong time. So you're chewing gum and the saliva contains amylase to start to break down your food in your mouth. The chewing mechanism will do that. And that's why saliva increases when you chew gum. People say I have a dry mouth. If I chew some gum, it gets better. So here comes the saliva with the enzymes. And now you're swallowing that. And the brain says there must be food coming because the saliva increased.
Interesting.
Now there's no food. So the person can have reflux just from that because all this acid is being produced to get ready for the food, and then it doesn't come.
Right.
Yes.
All right. So what about food sensitivities? Do we need to talk about that, about digestion? Is that something you ask them about or do testing on?
Yes. Okay. So if somebody says, I've seen this even in small children that will say, the mother will say, the child is 2 and they have a lot of eczema. I hear this a lot in toddlers. I think it's from formula or it's from something the mother's eating, but the mom will tell me a lot of times they're given antibiotics during delivery, and then the child is actually born with eczema. But it can be also an inability to break down food. So we know that cow's milk, for example, has very large molecules, and the body's not meant to break these down. It's meant to break down breast milk. And we're the only species that drinks milk after we're weaned, right? You don't see adult cows drinking out of the other one's sack. You don't you don't see that on a daily basis, I guess. So if you're drinking that milk and those molecules are hard to break down, then that puts more work on the digestive system. But anything that the body is not comfortable with, or it causes an inflammatory response. Well, we know the symptoms of that: hives and swelling and sometimes choking if it's an anaphylactic response. And and this is one reason when you do food testing, I like the IgG response, because it's 3 days out. So you can eat something on a Tuesday, maybe not have a reaction till Friday, and you never suspect that it's what you had Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
And that way, excuse me, you can say, okay, I got to find out what this is. And I see a lot of times that it's eggs. I see that come back all the time. And especially in children that have allergies, because most vaccines are incubated in eggs.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
So they have a problem with that. But it's always the protein, and they're putting toddlers on reflux medication.
Oh, that's sad.
They're dooming them. They're dooming them. They won't grow bones. They won't grow right. They will not grow right or be right on an acid reflux medication when they're small. It's terrible.
Which leads me to a question I didn't write down for you, but I think it's important for our listeners. If you were to go to a conventional medicine doctor with digestive issues, you probably wouldn't get asked the questions that you just said you asked your patients. You need to get to the root cause and ask the right questions and trace it back like a detective.
Yes. Instead, everything is an antacid. So I have patients that have had their gallbladder removed. They still have the same symptoms. They go back to the doctor and he says, get on an antacid.
Oh.
I don't know what they do if they didn't have antacids. Now, they have their place for scans and scopes and things that I don't do. I think that's awesome, and we need them for that. But as far as just handling basic digestion, their answer is always increase your Prilosec, increase your omeprazole. No. Now, why else is this a problem? If they're not absorbing minerals, the person isn't absorbing minerals, they're headed to osteoporosis even faster.
Ooh, okay.
Minerals run everything in the body, especially the electrical system, because minerals are conductors of electricity, as we know. And so if someone has heart issues and they use the paddles, boom, it's electrical. It's an electrical response. So without minerals, the heart will not function. Then people get AFib and they get SVTs and PVCs and CBDs. I'm kidding, CBDs. So But they get all these problems with their heart. It's too fast, it's too slow, it's out of rhythm, and then mostly it's because they're taking an antacid. And so without that, they don't absorb their minerals that they need.
All right. So here's a question about conventional medicine. When, if ever, do you refer one of your patients to a gastroenterologist? Is that ever necessary?
Yes. And I'll tell you a perfect example of that. That's a great question. So when I do the Dutch hormone testing on people, it includes a marker called 8-OHDG, and this is an oxidative stress marker on the body. So it measures damage to the mitochondria and the cells that can lead to a degenerative process. In other words, it could cause cancer formation, Alzheimer's, these kinds of things. So we're glad that that's included in that test. So I had this gentleman, and the range that it should be is 0 to 5.2. Well, I wanted around 2 or less. Okay. This guy, his was a 12.
Wow.
That's the worst I've ever seen.
Oh my goodness.
And also his total cholesterol was only 100, which is another bad sign. You don't want to have really low cholesterol. So I told him I was going to run a cancer panel, and I did. And it came back that he had a marker that could be pancreatic cancer.
Oh.
And this is why people don't find out till the last minute that they have pancreatic cancer. You can be down to 10% function of the pancreas before you get a symptom.
Oh my.
And 20% liver or kidney function before you have a symptom. So I sent him there, and he went and got a scan, and they said, no, there was nothing there, but it was his gallbladder. So it was connected to the digestive problem, but it was a problem with his gallbladder. It had a lot of calcium around it. So it was damaged. Calcium only builds up where there's an area of inflammation to begin with.
Okay.
So
good for you for finding that early. You had mentioned earlier that digestive enzymes can be a good thing, especially as we get older, which I can relate. Yes. Do you have any suggestions? Because I know they're everywhere, and should you buy them at CVS? Should you only get pharma grade ones? What do you recommend for a good digestive enzyme?
Well, there's so many companies out there that make them. I would go with a reputable supplement company. But all of them make them like designs for health, pure encapsulation, standard process,
Okay.
metagenics, they're all making orthomolecular, they're all making really good broad spectrum enzymes. The issue is I went online one day, I found out all the enzymes that a person needs, and I tried to find one product that had all of them in it, and nobody has it.
It's terrible. That's an opening for someone to jump on, a marketing
Yes,
opening.
and so Wobenzyme is a German company.
Mm-hmm.
And they also, I think Garden of Life carries them now, but Wobenzyme is an excellent, excellent enzyme. And you can use it. And let me tell you the coolest use for enzymes ever.
Okay.
This is so cool. So when I have had patients that have had a lot of swelling or a lot of sores or things on their body, like their circulation is poor.
Mm-hmm.
And they can't figure out what to do with it, instead of putting on take a steroid or something. We don't want to keep doing that. So I have them take enzymes on an empty stomach. So I had this woman come in because you might think, why would you take an enzyme if you don't have any food in your stomach? So this woman came into my office and she was in her late 70s and she could barely walk. I mean, this woman was probably 350 pounds, had a cane, really sweet lady, really sweet. Just, it was an effort to do anything, and sat down in her chair and she said, have you heard of lipedema? And I said, yes. She said, no, I don't mean lymphedema. I mean lipedema, like in the fat, right? And I said, yes, I've heard of that. So she had this so much that the sides of her stomach were getting harder and harder and harder, right? So her sides of her body are encroaching onto the stomach. She said, I can only eat a little handful of food every day.
Oh my.
But she had so much fluid on her body from that buildup that she couldn't do it, right? So I said, I want you to take 6 enzymes on an empty stomach 3 times a day for 2 weeks. Now that's a lot of enzymes.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of 2 weeks, she had lost 15 pounds of fluid. And she said, I can eat again because it's not hurting. I can push on the skin and it moves.
Wow.
Right. But I don't know what their answer is clinically, honestly, from the medical profession. I don't know what they do for that.
Mm-hmm.
But I also suspected ascites. Now, ascites, as we know, is fluid buildup really big in the stomach. That's only in the stomach. And it's a sign of liver failure, is actually what it is. And so the fluid just sits there, and then it almost turns into like a mucus type stuff. And you have to go in the hospital and they draw, you've heard of people had fluid drawn off of them, and then it does that for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But so I had to refer her to be checked for ascites because I don't check for that. But
I'm going to pause you for a commercial break about you. Dr. Jean actually does telemedicine. That's how I met her. I had her run my hormone panel a year ago, and I had never had the Dutch panel. So if you're hearing this, this is not supposed to be diagnostic help, but if you want help from a professional, she does telemedicine, and I'll put that in the show notes. Okay. Go
awesome.
ahead.
So when someone has a fluid buildup basically anywhere, it can be from a mucus layer, just like if anything's inflamed, mucus is there to protect the body from further damage. So if someone has sinus issues and they're always blowing stuff out of their nose and their sinuses hurt to touch, it's the buildup of mucus, right? And then everybody wants to buy Mucinex with that green blob on the box or something.
So gross.
But that's actually coming from inflammation.
Oh.
And so the body is controlling that by saying, okay, if her sinuses are inflamed, let's put down some mucus to keep them from being more inflamed. It's not something we want to get rid of. Because some people have excessive mucus production because they have a liver issue, which is a whole nother story. Or if they have too much methylation, like flushing things out too fast, they have low histamine levels. Everything's dry. They feel dry inside their body, like, oh, my tissues are so dry. Now, that can also be a hormonal issue, especially in women with low estrogen. But there's so many things that go along with this. But the buildup of fluid or mucus is a sign that we need to break it down, not by taking Mucinex. But enzymes on an empty stomach will not hurt you, because if there's no food there, the enzymes are going to go after the buildup of old proteins that are causing also inflammation, like joint pain is huge to take enzymes on an empty stomach. It works like a charm.
Thank you.
And they'll say, oh my gosh, I I feel so much better, it's because the old proteins built up and are inflammatory and they don't belong there. And so the enzymes are breaking those down, which I never heard that taught. I just something I had to figure out for myself.
Yeah, thank you. That's excellent advice. Now that we've talked about the gross green blob on Mucinex, let's talk about poop. Let's
Oh yes,
transition
food
to another
sensitivity.
excretion.
Yes, okay. So if someone already has leaky gut and they eat certain foods, it's going to cause more inflammation than it normally would, just because the gut wall is permeable and therefore it's inflamed. So food can travel in and out of where it shouldn't belong, right? So this is how I explain it to my patients. So if you're not breaking down your proteins, it still has to go through the regular channels, to get out. But now there's a leak in the gut wall. And so now the proteins go through the gut lining out into the bloodstream where they don't belong, and the immune system is now activated. And this is the beginning of autoimmunity, right? So now the food says, this is what the immune system says to your food. What are you doing out here? You're supposed to be in the intestines. And the food says, I don't know what I'm doing out here. And the immune system says, you must be a foreign invader. I'm going to attack you. Boom. And here's the autoimmune system. So it starts with food sensitivities. It can start with chemical sensitivities. These are signs that people should pay attention to, because the leakier your gut, the more food sensitivities you will have.
Mm-hmm.
And then people will say, I'm down to 3 foods now. Broccoli, and broccoli. Well, who wants to eat that the rest of their lives? And that's why leaky gut can perpetuate it, and the food sensitivities can perpetuate the leaky gut. It's because foods are not being broken down. So gluten, we all know about gluten, and everybody says, well, I have a gluten problem. The main reason they do is the gluiness in the gluten. It's the protein that is very, very difficult to break down. So here's an example. If you're washing a vegetable, like let's say you had some vegetables in a bowl and you ate them all up and you rinse out the bowl, it's probably just going to be easy to do. Clean. Yep. But if you make dough and you take the dough bunch out, take the dough out of the bowl, and what's left in there, if you let that sit for a few hours, it's cement. Mm-hmm. That's what's going on inside of the body. So there are certain enzymes that people can take for gluten, but it's a protein. So it's always proteolytic or protease enzymes that are never a bad idea. But people will say, my arthritis is so much better. I'm not depressed. I'm not as tired, because if you're not breaking down your food, it takes all your energy. As I was saying, the enzymes take that for you. So Eskimos, the word Eskimo actually means to eat it raw. Now, I don't want to be an Eskimo. Okay. I'm not going to eat blubber raw. I like mine well done, please. Thank you.
Me neither.
So Eskimos eat a lot of fat. They eat a lot of meat, very few vegetables, if at all, and very small amounts of fruit. And they have so much physical endurance. They can't believe it. It's just they can walk 30 miles in the snow. They're fine. And they just keep going and going and going. And so they eat all this raw stuff. And that's why it contains its own enzyme. So if you pick up an apple off the ground and you turn it over and it's got a brown spot, that's the apple's enzymes getting rid of the apple. Mm-hmm. Well, people say sometimes, well, if I take, this is the way they all sound to me. I guess I always say this voice, but they don't. So if I don't take, if I take too many enzymes, does that mean my body won't make them anymore? And I say no, because you would be dead. Your body's always going to make enzymes, but stress will affect the production of enzymes, and stress shuts down your digestion. So if you've ever had a fight with somebody at the table and everybody denies it, but I know the truth, and you're done eating, you've had maybe 2 bites, it doesn't matter. You have to get up and leave the table. You're done, because now you've switched from parasympathetic mode into sympathetic, and all the blood has gone away from your digestion. And now there you go. And you can't eat for a while. And that's what happens. But so stress causes a depletion of enzymes. Being sick causes a decrease in enzymes. So if people, or an injury. So if they say, I just had surgery for whatever, like they had a broken bone or something else, and they had stitches or something else, and they come home. They need more enzymes to actually get in here and start the repair process. So they need to increase them. Here's another awesome use for enzymes that most people don't think of. Now, I don't know, Brenda, if where you live, they have fire ants. Do you have fire ants there?
No, not very many.
Okay. Well, in Georgia, there's mounds and mounds of these fire
Ooh.
ants for people's farms, and they're huge,
Oh,
and the bites are horrible. They're just really, really, really painful. And so this gentleman came in years ago, and he had fallen off his mower, his lawnmower, and his hand fell into a fire ant nest.
ooh.
And it was swollen about 3 or 4 times the normal size. It was bad, and it hurt terribly. So I told him not only to take extra enzymes, but to open some enzyme capsules, mix them with a little water, and put it on his bites. Because when an insect bites you, they're injecting protein.
Mm.
So the enzyme mixture gets in the skin and breaks down that protein, and in 2 days his hands were back to normal.
So the toothpaste theory doesn't work as well as enzymes. I've seen on movies people put toothpaste on mosquito bites. No, use enzymes in water. All right.
Yes.
Okay.
I have never seen toothpaste on mosquito bites necessarily, but I've seen toothpaste on cuts will actually help stop the bleeding because of the sodium content, which is very interesting.
Oh, yeah. So talking about stress, if we were to remove the stress, would our digestion return to normal? Maybe, maybe not.
Maybe, maybe not, but most of
Okay.
the time it will actually improve just because the stressors are gone.
Sure.
So, and some people, and I never tell people this, they have to chew something 50 times. That's just stupid and it's boring. And who's going to count? No, no. So we just want to enjoy our food, taste the flavors, enjoy it, and feel nourished afterwards, right? But if people are just keeping their stress, because their stress can be coming from something else, it's not necessarily emotional stress. It can be a toxin, food sensitivity, or an infection. All of those raise the cortisol, which then shuts down the digestion.
Mhm.
That's what happens. And
What
so they'll
about
say, go ahead.
what about parasites? Is that something that is common with digestive issues or kind of out there in left field?
No,
is
it is
something?
very common.
Oh,
It's 1 out of 3 people now.
oh, what do you mean by that?
Well, that 1 out of 3 Americans has parasites.
Mm,
So
yikes.
what's funny is, this is funny. So my husband and I were flying to Phoenix in early December. I went out there to speak, and he went with me. And we're walking through the airport. I won't name the airport, and they had a big sushi bar in the middle of it. Okay. And all these people are looking in the glass, the windows. Oh, what have they got? What kind have they got? Everything. And I act just like a circus barker. Get your parasites over here. Free parasites. Nobody was paying attention, but we were laughing, because if I have a patient that thinks they have parasites, I'll tell you the signs of parasites in a moment. But if they think they have parasites, if you don't want to pay for a test, you can do a parasite cleanse and it won't hurt you to do it. It absolutely won't hurt you to do it. But people that have parasites will complain that no matter what they have tried, they're still having issues. And one of the biggest issues is anal itching, especially at night. Okay.
When the
During a
critters
full
are
moon.
active.
They're active, and a full moon, it's on. The party is on a full moon. So they're scratching their butt. They're grinding their teeth. Now, this is a hugely common symptom, and they're doing it. Usually children are doing that a lot.
Mhm.
And parents will tell me, I can hear him grinding his teeth. Okay. Dark circles under the eyes. It can be either losing a lot of weight or gaining a lot of weight. Also be a lot of diarrhea and constipation, sometimes alternating, but
Wow.
mostly constipation. Now, another children, because their parents are usually still helping them take a bath or something. Now, of course, grown-ups aren't being helped to take, is acne on their bottom.
Oh.
So I had this funny story about this. So this woman brought in her 17-year-old son. And she said, something's wrong with him, and he's lost 8 pounds in a month, and he hasn't been trying. He's still eating, and he's losing weight.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, do you have any animals at the house? Yes, we have 2 large dogs. I said, do they, in the South, they say give you sugar. Okay. I said, are they giving him sugar in the face, licking his face? Oh, yeah. I said, Does he have acne on his butt? Now he's 17. His mom's not going to be looking at that, right? But
We
I
hope
said,
not.
does he ever complain of that? And she said, oh my gosh, it's so bad. There's blood in his underwear.
Oh gosh.
I said, he's got
Parasite
parasites.
cleanse.
Yep. And he had acne around the mouth area
Were the dogs licking?
where
Oh.
the dogs were licking it. I said, what does a dog lick before it licks you? Okay. 3 guesses. The first 2 don't count. Okay. So so I put him on a parasite cleanse. He did it for a month. It's like 10 days on, 10 off, 10 on. Acne all gone, got his weight back, feels great. And she said, I am so mad. I said, what are you mad about? Why didn't somebody else tell me this? I said, that's not their training. It's not their training, right? But also with parasites, the person can be really hungry and they just ate an hour ago. Now that's a very big sign of them. So you're like, and they'll say, my kid just ate this enormous meal. An hour later, they're snooping in the fridge. That's a sign of parasites. They're eating your food.
I heard
Also,
that drooling was a sign of it. Is that true or not? If you drool
drooling
in bed.
I think drooling is a sign of other problems. I don't necessarily think it's worms.
Okay.
I don't know. You know what? They never seem to run out of situations where it could be possibly be a parasite. Now if I see elevated monocytes and eosinophils on a blood test, not neutrophils, lymphocytes, but in the white blood cell section, if I just see monocytes and eosinophils elevated, that's a pretty good sign. Plus, if they're anemic. So parasites love iron. So if somebody thinks they have parasites, we don't want them to take iron because it'll feed the parasites.
Oh, okay.
This is how my husband says to check see if you have a pinworm. Now this is a joke, okay?
I was going to ask you if you had a joke, so thank you.
Yes. Okay. So he said, don't eat anything for 3 days. Hold a saucer of milk in front of your mouth, and the pinworm will stick his head out and eat it. Lap up the milk. That's how you know you have a worm. I've heard that joke like 10,000 times in 25 years.
Okay.
He still thinks it's funny.
Yeah. Well, I remember
anyway,
watching my cat walk upstairs and I saw a little worm come out of its bottom and it was very frightening, but we don't look at our bottoms. So
no, but here's what's interesting. So a lot of people will say when I put them on a cleanse, because it travels in families. So think about this. Little Johnny gets licked in the face, then mom kisses Johnny. Then she kisses her husband. Now everybody's wormy. But I have seen that if people, when I put them on a cleanse and I tell them about it, they'll say, their first question is, am I going to see something come out in the toilet? And this is what I tell them. If it's big enough to have a face on it, you have my permission to name it before you flush it. Oh, there's Billy. Look, there he goes down the toilet. So, but a lot of times people aren't going to see something moving. This is what they're afraid of. Something moving is going to come out of their body. Now that is very rare for this to happen, but it will actually, you might see very, very tiny little white segments. But let's say, for example, that I see the eosinophils or something, and I put them on a parasite protocol and they still are complaining of something, I will order a stool test. I tell them I do not participate in the collection of the sample. Thank you. Okay. So they send off a stool sample and it checks for good bacteria, bad bacteria, infections. It could be in the gut, which can also cause the food sensitivity problem and digestive issues. Like IBS, for example, I found was a food sensitivity on a 12-year-old girl with IBS. It was eggs. Got off eggs. She's perfect. Okay. So it's not hard to do. She doesn't need to be on steroids the rest of her life. She's 12.
Yeah.
What that would do to her periods is beyond frightening. Okay. So if ongoing, like IBS, ulcerative colitis, irritable bowel disease, inflammatory bowel disease, IBD, those sometimes require a stool test because you can have E. coli and all the Klebsiella and all these other things that are going on in the gut that you need to kill those infections. It won't show up necessarily on a blood test, but sometimes stool tests can miss parasites. And the reason is they get way up high into the small intestine and they hide.
Oh.
They see that sample thing coming and they all run. They're not stupid.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground. We've talked about dogs licking and worms and food and sneezing and just everything. I read before I called you that the healthiest countries in the world, as far as eating and not having stomach issues, are Italy, Singapore, Iceland, Norway, and New Zealand. Obviously, the United States didn't even land on, they're not even in the top 10 or the top 20. What is going wrong?
No.
Are we just eating too much crap?
It's the processed foods that are devoid of nutrients, and people are eating too fast, and they're just stuffing stuff in their mouth without realizing what is it. They're not taking the time to think about, where did this food come from? How many people have maybe handled this food before it got here? I mean, when I have these beautiful eggs that I can buy that are, pasture fed and they're just farm raised and everything else, they're beautiful. The yolks are bright orange. And I think the one I get is called like Helpful Hens. It's so cute. And then other brands will put a little card in there with hen of the month or something in their picture and their name. Okay,
Great
this is what we
marketing.
should do. I love that. So
Yeah.
it connects us back to the land and where did these things come from. But people have lost that because they're too busy. Now, I love to hear this from somebody. I'll say to a woman, I'll say, now, you can make an egg in the morning. I don't have time, but she sits 20 minutes in the Starbucks line.
Busted.
See,
Yeah.
it's called don't want to do it. Don't want to do it. Right. And then people will say, oh, I'm eating really well. I'm drinking Carnation instant breakfast every day. And I'm over here screaming, going, no, it's horrible. It's horrible.
Yeah.
So but also because of the gut, our probiotics are down because of the massive amounts of antibiotics in our animals that we're eating is going into us and causing more leaky gut. That's another big reason why everybody has it. But all the antibiotics that people are taking for just a hangnail, give me an antibiotic, I got a hangnail. And so that's just perpetuating more and more issues. And then the body says, I can't process this, I can't process that, because they don't take time to stop and think, maybe I should eliminate some foods. Now, this is another reason I do food testing, is because an elimination diet takes too dang long. What are you're gonna look at every single ingredient, every single thing you eat? You can't possibly know that. Just do the test and you find out all at once. Right?
Right.
But then if you avoid those foods for it, now that's another question people say. If I have a sensitivity to dairy or whatever, and I stop eating it for a couple months, can I start reintroducing it? Because most people love the foods they're actually allergic to, as we know.
Sure.
And I'll say after 2 months, you can eat some dairy. Let's say it's dairy by itself for one meal, just only dairy, and then wait till the end of the week, at least 3 to 4 days. If you don't have a reaction, you're probably okay with it. Or take some extra enzymes. So this is what I'll tell people too. If you know you're going to eat this and it's lactose, take some lactase enzymes when you eat it, and you probably won't have a reaction. This is what people don't think about. Well, if I take the proper enzyme to break down whatever protein I'm ingesting, it's going to eliminate my problem with it. And that's usually the case.
Yeah.
But yeah, stool tests are very good if it's ongoing, not resolving, can't figure it out, but something is wrong. And they check for about 35 parasites, I think, on it.
Since it's January, let's talk about dry January. A lot of people, including myself, are going dry, and alcohol probably messes up your gut, correct? It's
Yes,
not
because it's sugar. It's sugar, and sugar wipes out minerals.
Okay. And how do you feel about cleanses? People are cleansing this month. They're doing all sorts of things. Are you for that?
Fine. That's fine. That's normal for this time of year. By March, it's all forgotten and they're back doing what they were doing. But if people, this is what my first question is before I put someone on a cleanse, because I don't put every one of my patients on a cleanse. Some of them aren't ready yet. And my first question is, are you having 3 bowel movements a day, 2 to 3 a day? And if they say yes, they're ready for a cleanse. But if they say no, I tell them I want them doing 2 brown bananas a day. Okay. And I see people, Brenda, years later that will see me out somewhere and go, hey, I'm still doing my brown bananas. And everybody looks at us like, what does that mean?
I've never heard that. I love that. It's a
Yeah,
good goal
so
to have.
they never forget that. So what I mean is they're fully formed. They're not rat pellets. They're not dried out. They're not loose. They're just like a banana would be formed, about the consistency of a banana. Not that you're going to feel your poop, but you can tell that. And that you're not sitting in there on your phone for an hour scrolling on the internet. You're getting the urge, you go and you're done. Now, another problem with digestive issues, people get the urge to do that and then they ignore it. They're busy. So I tell them the postman only rings twice. And I say, you get that little, gotta go have a bowel movement. And they're saying, I'm busy, can't tell right now. So the urge goes away. And a little while later, ding dong, here it comes again. I'm sorry, I'm busy. And it stops. And teachers are the worst constipated people that I deal with, because they're watching kids from the time they get there till they leave, and they cannot have time to go to the bathroom when they need to. Plus the stress of being a teacher. Their guts are so messed up, it's not even funny. So I feel sorry for them. They just don't have enough time to take care of business, basically.
And they're not paid enough. So it's crazy. It's crazy.
No,
all right.
I wouldn't do it.
I think we're going to wrap up on that note. Parasites, poop, 2 bananas a day. What a marvelous podcast this has been. And I thank you, Dr. Jean, for your immense knowledge in all areas. I will put how to reach out to Dr. Jean in my video notes and my show notes, because she's in Toccoa, Georgia, and she is
Toccoa.
Thank you. She is the bomb, and she will make you laugh. You will heal just from hearing her jokes. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Brenda. You're just such a peach.
Whoa.